I will go ahead and get started. So, for those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Michelle Derricks. I am the host of the Peace in His Presence podcast, and I'm a first time author. I was just thinking it's been 3 months since Promise Rest came out. And so I can hardly believe it. It's been kind of a whirlwind, as Heidi would know, because she's published quite a few books. And Heidi is now with us, and she is a oh my goodness, she's a mental health I always call her a mental health expert. She's like, "No, I you should call me mental health advocate," but she's an expert in my eyes. She has helped me as a friend through some different things, and I always love talking to her. She is an author, she is a speaker, she's also a podcast host along with her husband. We have been collaborating this idea together for a while about doing a reflection mini challenge. And so Heidi, would you like to give a little more information about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think with your book and the emphasis on rest, and you created these 5 R's of reflection, which you'll share with us in a minute, that we'll be using for our reflection mini challenge as a template, if you will. It doesn't mean it's the right way to reflect or the only way by any means, but it's a useful template. And I think both you and I, when we had discussed it on your podcast and then in our own personal experiences, that this was a really helpful tool, and we wanted other people to be able to access that. And then at the same time, I was writing my book that's going to be released on Tuesday, this coming September 13th, on emotions and the gospel, and how part of my goal was to just get people to be able to hold their emotions and spend time with them and bring them before God and all of that. And so we thought that reflection was something we could help people do together with this 5 R's, and also around the topic of emotion. And then they can take it, practice it with us during the reflection challenge, and then maybe use it some more if they'd like. And so the reflection challenge itself is 5 days. We like to say 5 moments, 5 days for your spiritual and emotional health. And so we will be reflecting around the emotion of burdened. And we chose this because it was something we both kept hearing from people so often in different ways, shapes, and forms. And we all hold different burdens. But I also think there's some commonness in our humanity, right? Of the burdens and in our culture in particular that we're carrying right now. Just post COVID stuff, right? All trying to slough that off. And goodness gracious, if it would just be gone, it just never quite is, right? And I think family stuff, we all have it. Some mental health stuff, whatever kind, is alive and well in our lives and those we love. A lot of us have, families we're trying to raise, or we are part of a family, and we then are, there's just stuff that comes with that. So some of the burdens, they're not all negative. Sometimes they're just there. They just are things we carry around. The political climate right now just kind of sits kind of heavy, that kind of stuff. Economic challenges are real. So burden we thought was a good one because we heard it a lot. So we are going to use Psalm 55, verse 22 to just kind of help us have a center in the word. And it uses that language of burdened. And we'll do the 5 R's then. And it takes place September 26th through September 30th. And you and I will both post online our reflections each day around one of the 5 R's and that emotion of burden. People can just follow along if they want. That can be their reflection for the day. Each day on our social medias, on Instagram and Facebook for both of us. They can also comment on those things with their own reflections and what they'd like to share. Or they can pull it and create their own feed of that reflection of the 5 R's. And so we invite them to participate any way they like. There's a little bit more information on both of our Instagram and Facebook accounts, I think, with that outlines that a little bit more, and they can look for more to come. We created a playlist in case people would like to get a little music in their lives to help inspire their reflection. But it's very low maintenance. It's a mini challenge, right? So maybe, Michelle, if you want to tell us a little bit more about those 5 R's that we'll be using each day to help people dig in September, get ready for that reflection challenge.
Yes. So as I was writing Promise Rest, I knew that I wanted to have a reflection piece. And so what I was looking back over my life and in the study and just through my own personal experiences, I realized that when I faced challenges, whether they were big ones or just like the regular everyday things that we face, that I noticed I took myself through facing those things in a certain way. And so I can't say that, I always said, "Oh yes, I'm going to do the 5 R's of reflection." I love alliteration, and for the Bible study, I thought it would be the easiest way to communicate that and then an easy way for people to remember it. I've always kind of had an anxious spirit. And so these are the things that really helped me. And especially, when we face those problems where we are at the end of our abilities, the end of what we are able to do. And I'm the kind of person that I like to fix it, control it, or make it go away. And let's face it, sometimes in life we find ourselves living in a story we didn't choose, or we find ourselves facing a problem we can't fix. And so what do we do? And we find ourselves at the end of our abilities. And so I created the 5 R's as a way to help people just be able to reflect on their daily lives. You can spend as long doing it as you want to, or what Heidi and I are going to teach you how to do is just to pause and take a breath
Mm.
and a moment throughout your day. And you can call it whatever you want. Someone said, "Well, I do those things, but I don't call them the 5 R's." And I'm like, "You don't have to call them the 5 R's. It's okay. Just for the sake of our challenge, that's what we're doing. And so you can call it however you want. So you can make it your own." And so the 5 R's are kind of also based on, you know, Heidi talked about Psalm 55, but when I was writing this study, this is something that I really clung to. So it says, "Because you are my helper, I sing for joy in the shadow of your wings. I cling to your strong right hand, holds me securely." Psalm 63, verses 7 and 8. And so instead of clinging to our abilities, clinging to our, whatever that might be, God invites us to cling to him and who he is. And when we cling to him and who he is, then we also have a better understanding of who we are as his children. And so the first one is rejoice. What's one thing that you could notice that's going on, whatever the circumstance might be, that brings you joy? What could you rejoice in? What is one thing that you could notice?
That one is the first one. I think one of our concerns was that people could, you know, like get into it. And then when we're talking about burdened, especially to feel like they need to trade, turn off the burden and turn on the joy or whatever. And that, isn't like, that's why it's a reflection, right? That's why it's
Mhm.
that pause that you talked about, because we want to instead like hold those things together and understand that like there is the one thing. And sometimes we need that reminder of the one thing from God so that we can feel a little lightness from the burden and also be able to keep walking through that
Mhm.
burden, right? And so I think that was important to both of us that people understood that in
Yes.
no way are we asking you for some positivity in this, but just that like there is joy to be found. Like that's something we believe in and to be able to
And
reflect.
sometimes, I think the important thing too is that joy does not mean happy. Joy
Yeah.
means just that quiet knowing that the Lord is with you, or that he has gone before you and is providing. And, I've been working on my posts, and I'm going to share how I use the 5 R's when my husband was in the emergency room in a very serious medical condition.
Mhm.
And how I moved through that. And I wasn't doing any happy dance in
Right.
the ER. Noticing that first thing, it just kind of opened up. And then I started noticing all the ways that God was showing up in that moment for us.
Yeah,
And so it was
absolutely.
something really simple like that. And, Heidi could probably talk more to this, but when we practice gratitude or rejoice or however you want to say that, it opens up the neural pathways in our brain, and it just helps us to see things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to also sharing a little bit of my story as well and the way that I've used it during the reflection challenge. And each of my posts will have a little bit of those mental health tidbits too, of like what we call this, that we know from a research perspective that God knew first was going to be really helpful for us.
And then the second one is release. Like, what can go? Like, what can you let go? What
Mhm.
do you need to leave? Or, whatever the case might be. And so it could be something, maybe letting go of a thought,
Mhm.
maybe letting go of knowing that you can't change the situation. And I always like to say, when I release something, I place it in God's capable hands, because his hands are the best place to be. Is there anything you want to
Awesome.
add to that?
I know, I was like, "Do you want me to add things?"
Sure.
I was thinking about how one thing we talked about, which we'll see in, again, the reflection challenge and expand on, is that, like, we don't have to own everything. Like, there are things we need to own and confess and stuff, but release is also about what we don't have to own. That is, like you said, God's to carry, someone else's to carry, things we can't control and the things we can. And I think that's a really beautiful picture, a grace-based picture of dealing with that question of what we own and what we don't own with that word release.
Yes, I like that. I was talking to someone yesterday, and I was trying to remember, and I'm like, "I think it was Heidi who told me this," and I'm like, "Yes, I don't own this." And what it was talking about is, like, sometimes when we get stuck in the emotions of others, like
Mm,
something that maybe they're struggling with, and it is a struggle, but I
mhm,
I can't own it, I can't carry it.
mhm.
God's not asking me to, and we shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I don't say shouldn't in, like, a bad way, just
Right, you
it's
have
better for
empathy.
us not to.
Yes, I am not concerned about you not having empathy, Michelle. But you're right, like, we're not also, like, emotion sponges. Like, Jesus calls himself, I tell my clients this a lot, our strength and our shield. Like, that there is something between us and the hard stuff of the world, so we don't have to just, like, take it all on too. So, yeah, and we'll get to work through that, I think, in this mini reflection mini challenge. Man, we, like, have a hard time saying it right.
We'll get it right by the end, right?
We will, right.
Okay. And then the next one is reframe. Like, what can shift? Can
Mm,
your perspective change? The other night, and I put pictures of this on Facebook and Instagram. I went for a walk with my husband and my son, and we weren't really planning on doing this, but I wanted to take a picture of Troy near his corn. But as I was standing there, I realized that the sun was like just right in the perfect position for us to. I've seen all these pictures where people like hold it in their hand, or
mm.
Troy's going like this, or
That's
Matthew's
funny.
pretending to eat it, and it was just hysterical. And because of all the health issues and stuff that we've been facing, it was just a fun moment just to laugh. Matthew and I we tend to be kind of goofy anyways. Troy's more serious, but it was so fun just to be goofy together. But
Mm,
as we were getting ready to take the pictures, Troy and Matthew are like, "Mom, shift the camera, shift, like move it." And I thought, how is life like
mhm,
that? That sometimes we just have to shift our thinking, or shift
mhm.
where how we're looking at something, or shift our view,
Yeah,
and we can reframe whatever is going on. And
yeah.
sometimes it's not a silly moment like that. Sometimes it's a serious thing. And so, but how can we shift our focus, or how can we reframe what we're looking at?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's one reason God gives us each other, right? Because we don't have a full perspective. I mean, that's like the existence of the church, right? Is many perspectives, and the gifts of that whole body. And so I think really taking a moment to pause and consider, like, what am I not seeing here? Has so much, not in a judgmental way, not in God being like, you better like reframe your thoughts. And sometimes I think we weaponize the Bible verse about like renewing our mind and stuff. And we have to remember that's just an invitation. Oh, what if I wonder what I'm missing here? And sometimes we get insight from others, and sometimes it's just that pause.
The next one is remember. Who is this faithful God that we want to trust? Who is he? What has he said? All of scripture tells us who he is. And so, what is it that we want to remember
Mhm,
about him? And that has helped me so many times,
mhm,
just remembering who God is. And also maybe remembering how he's shown up in the past, like how
mhm,
he helped me in the past through a difficult circumstance or situation. And so just taking that time to remember.
I love that. I could go on about vagal tone, but I think I'll save that for my post and different nerdy neuroscience things. But I do think it's really cool that not only that God gives us this whole Bible. I mean, gives us so much. And then he gives us people and he gives us creation and he gives us so much to remember. But I think the pause gives us the ability to remember what we need in that moment, right? Because Jesus died on the cross is certainly enough. And also, he gives us so many details about himself that he reveals so that we receive what that means for us in that moment that Jesus died and rose and then he's coming back for me. There's all different, things I think that we need to grab onto in different moments. And I think that, again, the pause, big fan. It's really helpful for
Exactly.
that.
Well, in that, when we remember Jesus's death and resurrection, whatever we are in that moment, we know that this is not the end of our story.
Mhm, mhm.
That our story is going to continue, and it's going to be wonderful because we'll be with Jesus in heaven. And so, just remembering that this moment is not like
All the
it.
moments. Yeah.
It's just it's and so it's just that remembering is so I can't wait to hear all the nerdy neuroscience stuff. And then the final one is rest. What promise remains? What promise can you hold on to?
Mm,
What promise is sticking with you at the moment? Maybe it's your confirmation verse. Maybe it's the Bible verse that's on your calendar for that day. Maybe
mhm,
it's something that you've seen, but what promise can you remember that will just help you find a place to rest your heart in, and
mm,
that that's what you're looking at instead of maybe what's going on, like that's never going to go away. Our
mhm.
burdens don't leave us when we do these things, but it just helps us find a different way of looking at them, a way to move through them, to keep going, and to remember that we're not alone.
Yeah. And one thing I really appreciated that you had told me when we went through this originally too is like sometimes it's just blank space with God. Like that last R is the ability to just sit for a moment and be tended to by God in that real promised rest, right? Is what you call it. And I know I speak about that all the time in my work because it's the thing I see, especially with spiritual trauma, which our world has plenty of. Uh, we need to know that God is a kind of God who just lets us lay back and rest in Him. And that might be the promise that you need for that particular pause. And it might be something else, like you said.
Well, and I think that, so oftentimes we look at Christianity and we think it's something that we have to do. And
Amen.
it's, Jesus has already done it for
Right.
us.
Yay. Yeah.
And so we can just rest.
Yeah.
And I think we have all these ideas of, well, okay, if I'm going to rest, I need to do this, this, and this. No, just be. Just
Mhm.
be with Jesus. Just sit there with him. If you follow me on social media or know me in real life, you know that I'm usually pausing to watch the sunrise or the sunset. I can't resist it.
It's true. It's true. It's like a beautiful gift. I used to apply, especially the verse, that Jesus went off to a quiet place when I thought of this concept. But recently, the verse that keeps coming to me, or I should say the narrative that keeps coming to me, is when Jesus, Mary and Joseph can't find Jesus and they're kind of freaking out and stuff. And then he's like, I just picture this 12-year-old, which 12-year-olds have a special place in my heart, saying like, "Didn't you know I'd be in my father's house?" Like what? Like, and I think about that, how like we are the father's house now. Like we are where the spirit lives. And so when we spend that time, like you said, with God, we get to know ourselves in this weird and mysterious way. And when we spend time with ourselves, then we also are connected to God in this weird and mysterious way. And so that's one reason we wanted to offer Psalm 55, especially verse 22, but the whole Psalm as a kind of jumping off point for people, but also to know that, like, that God is indeed with them, that this is an activity of rest just as much as it's an activity of reflection. And they're kind of the tool, if you will, because Christ lives in you.
Yes, and I love the imagery of that verse, to cast our burdens on
Mhm.
him, that we can just put them on him, and he gladly carries them for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I could talk about this all evening, but I better not get going too much, right? But we do invite everyone to join us September 26th through September 30th. I know, Michelle, that you'll have a few ways for people to be able to join the challenge. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. please follow both Heidi and I for the challenge because you're going to want to hear what we both have to say. And then there's also going to be other people who are going to be helping us promote it. We're going to be doing some fun prizes, and some of them are going to be posting their thoughts on the 5 R's as well. And so I'm really excited about it because I really think that we can all learn from each other. And
Mhm.
so follow both of us. But if you are worried that you might miss a post on social media, because sometimes you do not always see everything on Facebook or Instagram, I've noticed I've been seeing things like 5 days after somebody posts something. I have created a special email list, and so there'll be to sign. You can sign up for it, and then you'll receive a welcome letter from Heidi and I. And
Mhm.
then during the challenge on the 5 days in the morning, I will send that out. And what will be in there are my thoughts and Heidi's thoughts on that day. It'll be the exact same thing that you'll see on Facebook and Instagram, but sometimes some people like to have that in their email or if they're going to be out of town or traveling. And so that's available to anybody who wants it. And I will share the link later on how you can sign up for that.
Yeah, it's
And
true, and
so
you'll wanna keep an eye on, I think, between, now and the 26th, especially, like, who those partners are because they are the ones who will give away a prize. Fun books, Michelle's book, a couple of my books, and maybe, something else. So, we will see. It's like, that's a little bit all in the works, right? But I do think keeping your eye on that will help you, like you said, like, be able to fill your feed with the different people reflecting. And so there's like a community of reflection. And if all you ever do is just take your 5R and do that, that's absolutely fine. But at the same time, I think filling our feeds a little bit with that community of reflection during this week is going to be a gift.
exactly. I think that, when we can link arms with each other and pray for and with each other and share, as much as you're comfortable with about
Mhm.
maybe some of the burdens that you're feeling. There's that community that God has given to us, and it's such a precious gift. And
Mm.
even though we are spread out all over the United States and possibly world, it will be just a really special time for us to come together and learn a simple way to pause and to just rest in the peace of God's presence and encourage and support each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to the challenge. I'm very excited. Like I put together my music playlist and I was very excited about that. But then like just like you said, Instagram hides things and buries things. And I feel like maybe not very many people are seeing it. And I was like, man, but it's so fun to see people responding with different songs they like and things like that too. So it's a gift to us when we hear from you guys. I want to encourage people to maybe put in the comments now or even after the live is done and tell us what you think will be helpful about this reflection challenge or what you're most looking forward to or any thought that you have on it because I think it's maybe we're all looking forward to a different piece or and now that we've kind of gone through it like what kind of information are you most kind of excited to access that we talked about or whatever.
Yes, and just to add a few more things. So if you haven't yet, Heidi has the first chapter of her book available, and I put it up there on the banner there for you. So you could go and you could take a look at that. I'm very excited about this book because I'm very emotional, and I used to apologize for that, but I don't anymore because
Mm,
Heidi has helped me understand that that's the way God created me to be, and there's no shame in emotions. They are indicators of what's going on, and we can learn from them. And so the first chapter is awesome. And if you don't have time to read it before the challenge starts, that's okay. It's just something extra. So for those of you that would like to do that, and then also on that page, there's more information about the book and that sort of thing. And then also I'll be sharing some information. If you don't have my book yet, the CPH has made available the PDF of the 5 R's of reflection. It's a much longer version of what we kind of talked about here. But if you'd like to have that, that's something that's available for you to have. And I'm thinking, is there anything else? Watch both of us in our stories on Facebook and Instagram today, the playlists for the songs. And so, watch that if you haven't seen that.
mhm.
And I don't know, we might create some other things as we go along here, Heidi. We're having so much fun.
Yes, right? We are. It's more enjoyable, I think, than either of us even thought. And so, like, I just grab the pieces that are for you, right? And you can leave behind the pieces that aren't.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So we've had a lot of people joining us, and I'm just looking to see. There's a lot of excitement. I don't see any questions
Okay.
yet, but that doesn't mean that they're not there because I don't always
Yeah.
see everything right away. But
Right.
we will respond to you in the comments. And
Mhm.
so, and also friends, if you could just talk to your friends. I think a lot of us know people who would maybe love to learn how to do this mini reflection challenge with us. And there I said it wrong again.
You know,
Reflection mini
reflection
challenge.
making challenge.
Yeah.
It's
And
so
so I know. And so just invite your friends, let them know what's going on, tag them in the comments.
hard.
We figure the more the merrier, and we are all in this together. And so we just
Yeah.
want to spend time with you and help you just learn how to pause.
Yeah.
And that's what Heidi and I are all about, is just sharing what we've learned and sharing it with you. But in the process, we learn so much from all of you, don't we, Heidi?
Yeah, it's true. It is true. I'm looking forward to, I'll say it one more time, September 26th through September 30th. Like Michelle said, you can pick it up through email. She'll have posts on that. And just keep an eye, follow us both on Instagram. I'm Heidi Gaiman, right? You can see our names and stuff spelled out. And then Michelle as well. I think you have that underscore between your first and last name on Instagram.
On Instagram, yes. Yep.
Mhm. And I'm Heidi Gaiman Writes on Facebook too. So thanks for joining us. It's always a joy to be together live. It always feels a little bit special to have an evening with everyone. And then we'll look forward to hearing from you guys at the end of the month.
Yes, most definitely. Well, thank you for joining us, and a special hello to those who had to join in later. But God's blessings to you, and we look forward to connecting with you before and during and after the challenge. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye, friends.